Hey, welcome back to the HPE Coffee Talks here at HPE Discover in Madrid 2017. Day two, we have quite a lot of content coming out today, and we're starting this morning with a team from the Pointnext and talking about Edge as a service. So I'll hand it over to Tommaso and, dang, I've missed one of the names. Kenny.
Yes, thank you, Alistair. All right, so I'm going to start. Clearly it's not working. All right. Oh, slight technical difficulties here. All right, here we go. So I wanted to start with this this slide, which is from Maverick Research published by Gartner. And I thought it was really an appropriate way of opening up the content that we're going to share. And it's titled "The Edge Will Eat the Cloud." And what this is talking about is that the growth of the Internet of Things and the upcoming trend toward more immersive and interactive user interfaces will flip the center of gravity of data production and computing away from central data centers and out to the edge. And this is something that was published in September of 2017, so very topical in terms of what we're going to be talking about today with respect to Edge as a service. So I just wanted to frame up the discussion with this introduction of this Maverick Research from Gartner.
Perfect. So it's not a secret that technology is everywhere, but it's going to be even more everywhere, and everything is going to be connected. It's a fact, and it's just going to happen. And what it will cause is that the data will come from the physical world into digital, and we'll start understanding things we did not understand before. And it's not only about vertical processes, because it's going to really come horizontal processes across and really making connection from events to outcomes completely. And I'm trying to flip this slide, sorry. What this is going to happen is going to give us insight. It's going to give us, to us and to customers, new insights and information they didn't have before. It's going to allow connectivity with our new levels of security in today's world. It's also going to power new services and new capabilities that we didn't have before. It's going to create new industries like the cloud and many other transformational industries have created in the past, and opportunities to grow. The way we see is that it's going to power both the workplaces, the buildings that we see now, intelligent buildings, intelligent spaces, intelligent hospitals, but then it's going to go and it's moving into industries. Things that were not connected, things that were not automated will get new levels of automation. We also see that wider areas across the world will be connected. You know about smart cities, but it will go even further into smart cities. It will go into smart parking, into better flow of traffic, and all this data will flow, but it will have to be powered by the new intelligent edge with new capabilities, which, again, I would say it's many times the sky is the limit of what you're able to achieve. So we've been involved in a lot of customers' engagements. The customer are asking real-time analytics. Tell me what's happening now, not after the fact. Help me to automate my environment in a way that machines start repairing themselves, that my factories are operating at this level of efficiency. All this new level of competitiveness comes from places where work regulations or cost of the workforce is significantly lower. They say, I can still produce a high level of efficiency if I have the data. And so they are asking, help me extract the data from my processes and improve the downtimes, improve the efficiency of my workforce, and improve the way I produce my own products. And so we see examples of performance condition monitoring and time to productivity and identifying the traffic and video analytics and really transforming. I have a customer that uses video analytics to know how the refinery is performing, to see the level of the containers and how they are, because if there is a spill, that is going to create a significant hazard. So it's not only about surveillance of our people, but really surveillance of the behavior of the physical world. Well, here are some key examples. I mean, we're really talking about a real life example, not just IT, traditional IT. We have video surveillance, real-time user analytics, and again, the condition monitoring for the industrial world.
And these are really the areas where, actually capturing and processing that data at source is really, really important, because you are dealing with data perhaps that you don't necessarily want to traverse, from the edge back to the core before you can actually get the insights to action, right? So where you really want to be able to take near real-time action or real-time action is really where you want to capture and process data at the edge.
Are you providing the real-time analytics software, or is the customers bringing that to the storyline themselves? Who's doing the real-time analytics in your
Right.
environment?
So we are powering the real-time analytics. So either the customer will bring that or we will have a partner bring that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. One thing that is important beyond powering the edge is how customers are thinking about consuming this new IT infrastructure. Many of the customers we are engaged with, they don't necessarily have an IT team in their operational technology environment. And so they've come to us and say, can you help me power it and provide it as a service versus me buying the equipment and providing my own IT expertise. You have also to think that many have a big learning curve, because they're starting from a proof of concept, pilot, small deployment. And so what they've said, can you provide me in a way that it scales to the way I scale my infrastructure, starting from a line in the factory to multiple lines to multiple factory. And so a pay-as-you-go model is what we have set up in a way that you get a fully packaged and you really have a subscription pay-as-you-go concept where you get the entire solution. And that has been something that customers responded extremely well. This also allows the customer to have flexibility in taking risks, time to value, in getting immediate expertise, and they are able to leverage our IT expertise. So when you have to think about the edge, we take the expertise of the data center that runs 24/7 and put it on the edge and able to make it perform as that level of, as like a data center. Right now, it's all about extracting data, right? We extract the data that isn't really a mission critical type of need. It's get the data, I understand what's going on. But this is going to transform. It's going to go into machine learning, artificial intelligence, where you might have lights out factories, like you have lights out data centers. And that is where our expertise comes in, not only as a service, but really to provide really lights out capabilities to the customer. Well, we have to think that, thinking about our architecture and where we fit in, customers have their infrastructure, which is the picture on the right, the machines, the sensors that are connected. We, Edge as a service in our GreenLake Edge Compute solution, focusing on providing the level of infrastructure in the middle that could have different variations. You have stage 2, which is collection, stage 3, the analytics on site, and then it goes to core, where you would have the data center or the cloud, if that is the case. But we really provide that key layer in the middle. And many of the customers have engaged, that is a really sweet spot where they don't have the expertise. And we are coming in with a strong value proposition for them. And of course, network is important. It's not about, if you don't have the network, you don't have connectivity. And you know about our network solutions. Want to talk about this slide?
Sure. So this, the next two slides really ties to the Maverick research that we opened with at the beginning. So here, what we are seeing, and we are actually seeing this from people who are analyzing the market, is that the edge and what you want to do at the edge is really about speed of reaction. What you really want to do at the core is really about depth of insight. And so with the trend that I opened with at the very beginning, there are a number of different folks who are quoting, how quickly this trend of processing data at the edge is going to actually be upon us. This is just one quote from Gartner in this case, that 75% of enterprise-generated data will be processed outside of the traditional centralized data center or cloud by 2020, it says here. So this is just one prediction. I think if you went out there and looked on the net, you'd see a bunch of other predictions. But I think undeniably there's this trend that everyone is seeing that this is going to be happening over the course of the next, decade or so. Actually, faster than a decade, really.
Perfect. So with GreenLake Edge Compute, what we have done, we're taking our expertise of our IT, and instead of rubber stamping it on the edge, we actually have defined specific deliverables for the edge that make sense, because there is significant difference to delivering solution for a data center and delivering for the edge. So we have designed and look at those use cases and define what type of services we need. And then we have packaged that around into a pay-as-you-go model in a way that the customer can just adopt our proven solutions and they start applying and putting on top, as your question was, on their analytics that they have. But the truth is, this is just step one. It's going to expand significantly both our offer and also what the customers are going to ask. And I think this is our last slide. So we have defined and designed the right services. We provide infrastructure around it, and we'll be able to support it. You're really focusing on helping the customer to deliver the business outcome. And then, tell you the pay-as-you-go model, applying what you have learned on from flexible capacity on the edge is extremely important, allows the customer to adopt very quickly and pay per month a subscription versus a huge CapEx at the beginning, which is very important for them. Excellent.
So in order to get to the point of that pay per month, is there Pointnext is a consulting organization, is there a consulting engagement at the beginning to do the integration and then the ongoing, that's an OpEx and then an ongoing OpEx for the per device?
Correct, yes. We have customers at different stages of their knowledge. So we do have, as part of GreenLake Edge Compute, a consulting advisory solution that is specific for the edge. That looks at, does the customer have the right solution in mind? Because they start from different point of views what they are trying to achieve. Do they have the right network in place to be able to achieve the connectivity for what they're trying to do? And the third one is, do they have the right level of security in place? Mm-hmm. Both from external security, in terms of IT security, they get hacked, or do they have the right internal security, the people are accessing the right level of process? So we have those three advisories that then drive a design and implementation solution for implementing the solution. And looking at that specific element, when we look at this, this is not going in the data center. You have IT people, highly accessible. Many times the implementation, it goes into partnerships with customers and existing customers, partners. They would go, for example, in the factory floor and be able to install 30 feet in the air like we are in this building and install servers, gateways, or other type of equipment. So we do it in a way that the customer gets equipment, just has to plug it in, and then we remotely connect to it. And now we turn it on, and we support it from that point on. And that's when the customer starts the subscription when it's working.
I think we've touched on the requirement for the analytics and the partnerships with that. Do you have standing relationships with some of those, the vendors of the analytics packages, or is that a case-by-case driven by the customer?
Well, in the industry, there are, and depending on the vertical, which is very important, right? There is specific verticals, who is in the manufacturing, who is in the hospital, and so on. So we have a wide range of partners that we have defined that work in those verticals, and we started building a relation to bring them in our overall solution. Well, today we focus a lot about the infrastructure. Our partnership will expand it more as a platform and software as a service, and we will bring in those partnerships to make it happen. So we do have partnerships specific to the different verticals. Our experience is that there isn't one software, one analytics that solves all IoT problems. That it's a chimera, right? But those specific that are working today, that's why we have key partnerships.
Anybody with further questions? Well, I'm thinking of more.
So is there any, let me ask a question, is there any industry that you see that has been investing and looking at IoT and in edge and applying edge analytics and having the need to transform to address specific problems?
I have a question about the maturity in the industry. So what I understand is that in general, companies are still running POCs, whether big ones. But what real cases have been already implemented where companies say, okay, we go ahead with this infrastructure and analytics at the edge? Do you have examples?
So there is, that's correct, there is different levels of maturity depending on industries. We know that, for example, oil and gas, given the pressure on the cost per crude oil, they have been investing more into automation and analytics than other industries, right? So that's where we see them coming in. Then we have manufacturing. Manufacturing has been looking at that and to implement softwares to achieve that level of analytics. We have surveillance. Surveillance is actually something that we see a higher level of maturity. There is much more of an understanding what surveillance is. And so we see probably surveillance and application into security, one of the most mature use case versus type of industry.
So if you summarize it, what are the main drivers to drive edge analytics?
For example, for surveillance, the main driver is making sure that we have preventing issues from. We were talking with a customer about when the trucks come in and make sure that they're going the right place. And when the cargo is unloaded, it starts triggering the process. So it's not just traditional surveillance of safety. It's also using video analytics of surveilling a certain process that is performing correctly. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, at least for this industry, yes.
Yeah.
But if more in general, are there specific drivers which say, okay, these...
Yeah, so costs is a big driver, reducing the cost. I was talking before about competitiveness. The factories, for example, in high-cost locations need to achieve competitiveness. And we know from studies that production improvement was achieved basically year over year, like 20%. Now the improvement is like 1 to 5%. It's very little, and so they want to achieve improved production productivity at a higher rate to achieve a lower cost of product. So cost is a big driver of that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Paul Teisch, Tirius Research. Meg said yesterday, and you reinforced the message that the edge will eat the cloud. Seems a little extreme. So, I mean, I can see there being a mix going forward, right? Some cloud capability will never die, but can you describe what you think happens to the blend? Because I absolutely agree that where computing happens will be distributed, but can you kind of play that forward a little bit for us? Because the edge eats the cloud is a great soundbite, but it is a little sensational.
Well, I think I introduced it specifically for that, the sensation factor. And, the name of the research is really, it's called Maverick Research, right? So I think that is fully the intent with respect to that kind of title. So I would say that I completely agree with you. I mean, I think from my perspective, so this is my view, my interpretation of that piece of research. And that is, it's not really necessarily about a matter of, the edge is going to really, that the processing at the edge is going to increase, and then the processing at the cloud or in the core is going to decrease, right? It's not this mix, where one goes up and the other goes down. To me, I think it's really more about, things are going to grow, continue to grow as has been happening for many years now. And it's just really that there's going to be not less things going on in the cloud or the core, but it's just that the edge processing is going to increase perhaps faster, right? And a big part of this is because data is exploding, right? And the kinds of things that organizations are and governments and all of us are wanting to do with the data is going to drive these trends. That's my point of view.
No, that is completely correct. What we have to recognize, there is going to be a connection, edge to core, edge to cloud is going to happen, but the data on the edge, I actually predict it's going to be more than 90% is going to reside on the edge, is going to be processed on the edge, and only what is really necessary is going to move into the core, is going to go into the cloud. It will be analyzed. It will improve processes. It's going to go back on the edge to change those processes and to change, for example, machine behavior, people's behavior, process improvements. And it's going to have this continuous relationship between the two. However, we know that cost of telcos and cost of connectivity, especially when we talk about extreme edge locations, is going to require a lot of more edge computing, and only certain portion of the data will move to the cloud.
So you talked a lot about the IT-OT convergence. The big as-a-service movement across every space right now has a lot to do with financial implications, companies trying to change CapEx to OpEx. But from an IT-OT standpoint, with the deployments you guys have been involved in so far, and those that maybe you're talking about, where is the drive for this new consumption model of edge? Is it driven by OT, or is it being driven by IT? And how are you seeing the two groups collaborate once projects start?
So we see the driver coming mostly from the OT. The OT people, so who's running the manufacturing environment versus who's running a certain production process, not really from the IT people. Now, what's happening is that engagement and then is pulling in the IT people to participate in the conversation, because when you start connecting the operational technology environment with the network and then feeding into their core, you start pulling in the IT people that before they were pushed out from the conversation. So the driver is really from the people that are really running those processes.
And I think the consumption model, I think it's really, the driver for that is really around the simplicity of engagement. I think one aspect of the driver is the simplicity of engagement and having a way to acquire something that they need in a very simple, fast, efficient way. The second key piece is what Tommaso was talking about earlier, is that the way the implementation process for what the customers are trying to do usually follows this idea of a proof of concept pilot and then deployment, and being able to actually do this in a consumption manner enables them to more quickly adapt to the way that their implementation project is laid out.
Yeah, the thing that strikes me listening to you and going back, the edge will eat the cloud, and picking up on my colleagues' things here, is there a time frame around this? Because since the dawn of IT, we've seen pendulums swing from distributed to centralized, from many computers, client-server computer, whatever you frame it, it keeps swinging. And every time, the thing that has fueled it has been networking issues. And you just said, if we take the networking issues away and say I got the network for free globally, I can see a sense of filters being out there, getting rid of what one Stanford professor said, digital exhaust, get rid of that at the edge. But do you see it being a long-term program, this IoT edge, or are you just seeing it a blip before it all swings back into the data center again, or the cloud?
Well, you will recognize that the swings that we have seen since the beginning of time, with mainframes to servers, distributed compute, and then cloud back centralized, have all brought new use cases and new needs. It's not been replacing really what was happening, being done before. We need to recognize that. So it's for sure it's going to be a swing back sometimes in the future, but it's going to be toward a new type of workloads and experiences. So that's important. Now, when you talk about connectivity, the truth is that also if a network will be free, you would have latencies happening. When we are talking about having edge compute, which is not only analytics, that get the data, analyze it, and then understand the process. The maturity of IoT is truly artificial intelligence, machine learning, things being processed on site. And you cannot have latency of seconds going from, I'm making an extreme example, a location in Arabia with like the core in the United States, right? There is a light speed as a limit. And the going back and forth multiple times will delay the execution of key processes that will impact. So you still have the presence of the edge, but it's a totally different edge than one you have today. And then what we are talking about our solution, where we are going and where we are aiming our organization is really, you're going to have to think about machine learning, artificial intelligence, because that is going to be the changing factor in the way you're producing your products or you're achieving your results.
I agree with you, but only up to a point, and that's why I use the word filter. It may be interesting to know a thermostat is 70 degrees every 3 minutes or 10 seconds. I don't care about that. I want to know when it drops to 53 or goes to 110. I don't see that as analytics as much as just a filter. Because, right, if that kind of traffic is coming across a network, the latency, I just need to know about it. So, yeah.
Let me give you an example of things that we have worked in the organization. We have worked with a company, you probably have seen some demos around about pumps.
We had Texmark in here yesterday.
Oh, you did. Mm-hmm.
You're going to imagine that is not about data and just analytics. It's about changing the behavior of the machine. And that requires immediate actions from the machine itself that needs to be processed on the edge. And so that's a different type of data than just, I would say, the consumer data of the thermostat. Is really process analytics of things that are really going on at light speed into I'm going to say production environment as an example.
But in the example, your Nest thermostat is an IoT edge device that does the processing, sending information back into a central service far less regularly. So it refines the data that it's retrieved. Now, I like the idea that the edge has both a real-time function of local feedback, but also a data refinery function where it sends higher value data back over that expensive, slow network.
Right.
But I don't see that as analytics. I just see that as a filter. You know, that's just...
It's compute. It's local compute.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes, yeah.
My learned colleague from New Zealand.
Very good point.
Sorry. Yeah. Talking about the smart cities. Smart cities are a complicated implementation for IoT, you know. And what is important? The relationship with local telco providers and and advice, any use case you have to show for the audience here.
So the smart city, as you correctly say, is complex because there isn't only a technological solution to implement, there is a big social impact to that implementation. And there are so many possible solutions, from traffic to transportation to electricity distribution and availability of that, and services around the city. In some of my engagement and my reading and writing, there is also the fact that cities need to understand how to ask and put requirements in about what they need to produce. Let me give an example. Smart bench. The Park and Recreation Department would know how to request and do an RFP for producing a bench. But what is the RFP for producing a smart bench? They need help to define the requirements of what is a connected means, what is the speed, what is a solar to give the power, and so on and so forth. And this is questions, for example, smart city need to address. So they need help, a part of our advisory, to flesh out these requirements to define what is a smart bench. I'm only talking about the bench, but it could smart lights, traffic flows, and so on. And then the social aspect. Now you start talking about everything connected. If I start moving all my smart city processes to a smartphone or to a computer, and now you remove staff from being in front of a desk and addressing those processes, you need to start enabling the people to have access to that level of services. Otherwise, you're leaving out a big section of the population. So it's not just technology being implemented, but it's the entire social aspect being addressed.
And what about the regulation? I mean, there's a problem with the GDPR and many other regulation that, sorry, that are looking more deeply inside what is going on, what is data generation, data treatment, data,
Right.
okay, and all the stuff around the inter-complex world of the IoT. So could you address this with have you such a particular use case, such a story about that?
So I would
Not
even
for
add
GDPR,
yeah.
because it's going live and it's not really ready now. But talking about let me say security by design and all the things around the security of data.
Well, we have been. We leverage a lot of, we don't define the regulation, we'll adapt to the regulations, and we will provide the right services to be able to address those. That's our approach. But privacy and the security elements are definitely areas that we provide expertise on. Because part of privacy in particular, start collecting all this data about people's behavior becomes extremely important. We know what happens with data, right? So we do participate, and we try to provide as part of our solution a security buffer to help to address those. But again, we are not influencing the regulation. Every city is looking at its own regulations. We know that also regulations and laws are moving slower than technology does. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's quite use case based as well, right? Depending on what service you are trying to stand up. I can give an example of a service that we have in the city where I live. Actually, it's a smart parking kind of solution. And it actually is very, very usable. So as a consumer, the smart parking capability we now have in the city of Toronto actually works great. And it creates efficiency for me as a consumer, but also efficiency for the city, because the traffic police who actually have to come out and ticket you, for instance, now they have a device, right, where they know if you have actually expired your time, right, for the parking. So it's, that's just a very simple example, and one that I'm living with at the moment in my city, and it's actually very, very convenient, right?
So I think we've hit a couple of times the point of partnerships and needing to work with people who have existing relationships to the customers. Why should those customers be bringing HPE Pointnext in, adding another vendor potentially into their relationship? So what's the special sauce for Pointnext? Why should customers be choosing you?
Okay.
I can add on.
So first of all, a lot of the partnerships, you have a situation of brownfield and greenfield, where there is already someone there, and that partner will work with us because there is this is a new infrastructure going into and expanding, augmented to existing infrastructure. So we see the new levels of partnership being built with where we provide the added value, because they don't have the level of expertise. We are not talking about the same level of IT expertise being present. Then we have customers that instead are coming to us because it's a greenfield and they need to know about the solution, and we bring partners along with us. So you actually have, different from the past, all sorts of possible engagement that come for coming together, coming with us and we bring a partner, or just being us engaging with the customer. we see all different levels. We need to be able to adapt to those levels of engagements.
Yeah, I think Tommaso hit on it earlier. I mean, we have a history in terms of service experience, right, that we provide clients especially in the enterprise space, that actually does lend itself to, some of these use cases at the edge, right? Being able to provide the implement, operate, manage service, right, for these environments where they just don't have the expertise at that local site, right? And they can actually just acquire that from us in a simple, efficient, and transparent manner with GreenLake Edge Compute. So I think that is, one of the reasons why we designed this offer in this manner was to really address, those kinds of needs that we are seeing from clients for these types of use cases at the edge.
So if we've got often the pull is from the OTs, so the process engineers, in the case of manufacturing, who are wanting more intelligence and whose expertise is on programmable logic controllers and process automation. To what extent do they need to be educated and skilled in more of the IT pieces, or do they not require a whole heap of new skills to be operating with this?
Our mantra is that IT on the edge will be transparent. Transparent to the customer, like it is transparent for many of us in the cloud is transparent. You just consume it. It's on your phone. You don't know it's there, but you're just consuming the service. You didn't have to learn the cloud to consume these new apps that are close to your fingertips. And so I believe the majority will, going through our GreenLake offer, will not have to learn new skills. They will have to focus more on their business outcomes and on getting the understanding of the business analytics and then what it means to them versus understanding IT. Because we will be able to provide their IT. And it becomes, again, the concept of transparency in our mantra, it's extremely important. In fact, I was talking to a customer and said, I'm used to use the cloud. Why do I need to have I'm going to say the IT people, the expert, being there 24/7? He's the only guy in Australia, right? That he's serving. Say, well, I want him only to be involved when it's really necessary. Can you look after this end to end? And only when it's necessary, you'll jump on. And that's what transparent is. They are really moving from, I'm used to the cloud. The same concept starts applying to the edge and becomes a transparent. This is what we're providing.
Just trying to line this up with what we heard from TechSmart, where their actual new process engineers, so that they had this cultural shift of the tribal knowledge of their systems in the 50 to 60-year-old grey-bearded guys, and then a bunch of new process engineers who are in their 20s, and we're talking about the malleable minds, thinking about new ways of operating, that they seem to find a lot of innovation from their new process engineers, and the understanding of the capabilities of the tech needed to be with the new process engineers. So I still see that it can't be completely transparent, that the innovation is going to happen when the process engineers understand the technology underneath and the capabilities that are there. So I don't completely agree that this is going to be an as a service, because we've already discussed that it's a consulting engagement to deploy because every environment is different. Well, that's not how as a service works. As a service means we're going to deliver you a defined service, which is the same for every customer of that service. So I don't agree that it's going to be transparent and that it should be. Not needing to learn how to use the smart city parking system. Well, you did learn how to use it, but if it was well designed, that was easy.
Yeah,
so I think that's possibly where the difference is, that the sort of barrier to entry to learning is lower.
I'm going to make a comment. So my comment about transparent means that the customer and the users will not have to learn the IT aspect of the infrastructure. But truly, they will have to learn what this new data, these new processes that are going to be enabled that are going to be implemented, because you now have new inputs that are going to change the way you work. You're going to have, for the smart city, you're going to have an app that people will have to learn, but they're not learning what's behind the infrastructure. And customers have told us they don't want to build up an IT to run their OT. They don't. they will
That's
have.
because the OT people do not trust the IT people.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Alistair, but I think that's a reflection more of the audience of who we are, rather than the business types who really, I don't think too many are here. But yeah, we just want to know how this stuff works so we can exploit it.
Yeah,
But yeah, going
the
back
bus-
to the pumps situation, we asked the very same question a little differently about when you detect something, do you respond to it? And we found out the pumps aren't instrumented to be turned off if there's a hydrocarbon leak. So it's a one-way at this point in time, and it'll be a long while before an established industry like a refinery gets through that whole cycle of making things being capable of being able to react. So in that respect, it's a little bit one way, and so the edge as a service, it still comes back to my concept. I think it's just the mechanics inside a device just filtering stuff up.
But it is all enablement of people, because the smart city parking thing is the same. That Kitty still has to choose where to park her car at this stage. Right.
Wow.
Well, yes, essentially what the smart parking is enabling me to do is to pay, right?
We're not the smart drivers
More
yet.
easily. Yeah. Which I guess is good for the city.
The really smart ones is
Yeah.
the point where you have the video system that can recognize empty car parks
Yes.
and tells you where to drive to park, rather than spending 30 minutes driving around in circles until somebody leaves.
Yeah.
And to your point about now they turn off the pump when there is a problem that is detected, and you connecting that to the smart parking, it's all about the process. We're talking that right now, it's step one. Imagine step two, you start building on these use cases as
Yeah.
you get more comfortable, as the customer get more comfortable and understand how things are really performing. And that's what we see the evolution. It's not one event in time. I'm implementing my IoT infrastructure. I implemented my step one, and then on top of it, I will leverage that infrastructure to add capabilities, because now I feel comfortable and move on to the next levels. That is extremely important to think, and also when we are talking to customers, what is your end state you're trying to achieve? And by the way, you will not get there in step one. It will take you time to feel comfortable. This is why you're doing POCs, small pilots, small deployments. And then it's going to be like, now we consume cloud everywhere. Like the same experience will happen. At the beginning, if you remember, nobody was like, what do we do with the cloud? We just send stuff there. It's only file storage. And now we consume services just like this. The same thing will happen with the IoT.
I totally agree. Baby steps, little incremental things, and then learning from it at each cycle. Yeah, no problem.
Any more questions for anybody out there on the floor? I think one of the key things is that there is a long path ahead for this. The things like the video analytics to identify where the truck is and what's being offloaded in the right places is not something that's being done now, but that it's a forward vision.
Yes.
That at the moment it tends to not be closing the feedback loops. They still place a human in the feedback loops, and that we're a long way from where the AI systems will run on that edge. But until we get the instrumentation in place and those inputs in, you can't do the AI without the data in.
It is definitely a journey.
And as we heard this morning from DreamWorks, innovation is a culture, not a project.
Right.
Yes, correct.
That's a very good point.
All right, well, thank you very much, Tommaso and Kitty. What's our schedule? We will be back in a little over an hour with some looking at HPE storage for those who are on the live stream. Also, for those in the room, Becca has a few things to say as well.